Hi, my name is Dwayne Denny from Surveillance Specialist Group, and I'm really happy to finally get a chance to make this video. Now, in this video, I would like to walk you through how much the landscape has changed with regard to private investigating. So if you're an aspiring private investigator or potential client, this will help educate you not only on the tools that are now available to private investigators, but also give you a chance to compare yesterday's investigator who strictly relied on following people in surveillance to today's digital investigator. So in the next moment, we'll come back and we'll kick off with the first part of an investigation that we conducted just recently. This is a little device that I'm going to use to drive home the point that yesterday's private investigator may not be adequate enough to handle your investigative needs. This all began with an executive who went into his office one day, went to hang up his coat behind the chair, and as he turned, he happened to notice a small red light emanating from behind the chair. As he investigated the device, he saw it plugged into a charger, very similar to that which you would use to charge your cell phone. So then he proceeded to examine the device. He took the device and he plugged it into his computer, and therein lies audio files. And as he clicked on the files, he could hear himself talking to other people in the office, as well as conversations he had had the day previously. He quickly identified this as a listening device. So his first step was to call in someone like Surveillance Specialist Group who conducts counter surveillance, which was the very first part of our investigation. Today's devices, digital devices, don't use the same technology that a counter surveillance or person alleging to be a counter surveillance expert would have been capable of finding just a few years ago. There are a lot of wireless technologies such as Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, and cellular that is at the forefront of listening devices today. So the technology that somebody might have had in their old bug suite kit won't help you today. Surveillance Specialist Group deploys a lot of technologies, and we have the equipment to find devices like this that don't transmit, as well as things that work in the 5.8 and 2.4 band, which is very much utilized by people. It's very, very simple today to bug someone wirelessly. Particularly, you have the little Verizon hotspots that you can buy, and an employee can actually, and we've actually seen it, where they would buy a hotspot, they plug it in under their desk, and somewhere in the building they have a Wi-Fi device that's transmitting, and it's using the Wi-Fi from a little hotspot. We've actually seen it where people have actually gone as far as parking cars in front of office buildings, and they set up a Wi-Fi hotspot in the car with big batteries, and then they have a device that they plant inside the building that's transmitting via Wi-Fi. Wireless keyboards. They use Bluetooth technology, and there's people who have equipment that can grab the keystrokes. In addition to just grabbing keystrokes out of the air, there are very tiny devices that are probably about this big that people can put between your keyboard and your computer to collect keystrokes. And if you've heard about what happened recently with Target, they went in, they put a keystroke logger, and as they swiped cards, it collected the digital information that was going from the card swipe to the computer, because at that time they weren't encrypted. Now, what a lot of companies have done since then is they've changed all their card swipes out, and now they have what's called encrypted card swipes. So the data going down the wire and going into the computer is already encrypted from the time it leaves the card swipe. So that just gives you a general idea of how much technology has changed. Now, this device is a USB audio recording device that's capable of recording up to a week. It creates 200 megabit files that contain 4 hours worth of continuous audio. And again, by itself, it can only record from an hour and a half, but when it's plugged into a wall charger, it extends its life to the full extent of its memory. I was able to inform the client exactly what this device was and exactly what it was capable of, simply because of my experience with devices like this. Now, our next phase of our investigation took us to doing a data recovery of the device, which I'll explain more in the next video. Now, one of the things I didn't share with you, which is common for most people who plant listening devices, is they always tend to do a testing 1, 2, 3 recording on a little device like this. And in our case, this person did it. That was one of the things that helped us identify the fact that the person who had planted the device may not have necessarily been an employee, because no one was able to identify the person's voice. Which brought us to the fourth part of our investigation, which was to do a sweep of the office and use digital tools to look in each computer and examine the registry of every computer in the office to determine if in fact this USB device or a similar device was ever plugged in. Now, this device was not the only device that we found, and that was really, really crucial to our investigation. Now, what the computers couldn't tell us, because it didn't have their own unique serial number, is it couldn't tell us how many of these devices were ever at any point at play. But what we did learn is that by examining the registries of all the different computers that this device had been plugged into, we were able to determine that there was another USB device that did have an electronic signature. Because that device was purchased in the United States, we were able to determine, based from the GUID ID and the files transferred, that the person was going to the office late at night. They were taking the USB device that they were recording conversations with. They were going to just a random computer in the office that happened to be left on, plugging this device in, plugging in their USB hard drive, and then copying the recorded audio from this device onto their own personal hard drive. Now, most of you might think, well, how would that tell you who did it? I'll explain. The person that we believe that was responsible for this wind up being the only person who had a lot of instances of this other USB device that had its own serial number plugged into his computer late at night when there was nobody else in the office, or he would have been at home. Now, what made this person unique is he was the only person in the office who never let the IT department work on his computer. He was also known to have taken his computer home with him every single night. He was very diligent about it. He made sure he never ever left his computer in the office. So when we saw this other USB device that was associated with this USB device plugged into his computer, and only his computer, that was never in the office when this device was being plugged in, we knew that he was our number one suspect. Upon analysis of all the other computers, we were able to also find out that our perpetrator made a very fatal mistake, which will ultimately lead to him being identified as a person who planted the devices. As I mentioned before, every USB device sold in the United States has its own unique electronic identifier, which also includes your cell phone. This person was there late at night, and what we believe happened was his cell phone started to die. While he was waiting for these files to transfer, he plugged in his cell phone to allow it to charge. When he did that, the computer automatically recorded his electronic serial number from his cell phone into the computer's registry. Now, had it not been for a digital investigator, a forensic expert, this is evidence that would have been lost. The client originally only cared about what they had, the rudimentary evidence, which was they relied on their surveillance cameras, they relied on beliefs or ill opinions of people, but it wasn't based on fact. And that's what a digital forensics investigator brings to the table. We bring fact, and we follow evidence. We don't follow opinions or beliefs or prejudices. So getting back on topic, every single cell phone has basically a USB connection. Sometimes with an iPhone, you plug it into your computer and it connects with iTunes. Android devices let you plug in, and you can use tools that let you bring in video and pictures and everything else. That electronic signature is used by the computer to load drivers. So by us being able to get that electronic signature, we were able to throw it into some of our other tools, and it identified the brand, the manufacturer, and the model of the phone. We were then able to contact the manufacturer of the phone and then give them the electronic serial number. They were then able to put that into their database and give us what's called the IMEI, which is basically the serial number that you use to activate a cell phone. Now, only thing that was left from that point was for our client to have someone issue a subpoena to the service provider, and we had our suspect. Now, if you've listened to this, you know that the digital landscape from following people has changed a lot. Now, that's just one example. Another way that we've changed the landscape of investigating is all the records that electronic devices capture from any one given point. One of the biggest issues facing the digital investigator is all the things that happen to the piece of evidence before we get there. As I said before, the executive plugged this into his computer and began clicking on the files. By him doing that, he changed some of the metadata. Sometimes it's better if you call in an expert from day one. The next thing that happened was he passed the device on to somebody in his office that had more technical ability than he had. That person began turning the device on, doing little tests to see how it worked, to see if it was voice activated. And then he also wound up creating recordings that were actually recording over some of the recordings that our suspect had already recorded. And those recordings were imperative into determining when the device was actually planted. If the person did a testing 1, 2, 3 on the device, that was evidence that it could have been on there, or just a general idea of how long the device had been in play. The next thing that they did that didn't really work out so well is they tried to put in their own undercover camera. And what they did was they ran out to a Staples or a Walmart or something, and they grabbed just some regular old nanny cam wireless cameras off the shelf. And they failed to put the device back exactly the way they found it, and they deployed these cameras without covering up the little red light in front, which quickly would have given anybody returning to the area an indication that someone was conducting the surveillance, and the person would most likely never go near these devices again. Again, that's when an expert who knows how to put in an undercover camera that won't be detected. And in the next video, I'd like to walk you through a day-to-day scenario of all the different electronics and communications that you touch without even knowing about it. I want to just discuss some of the artifacts or the digital artifacts that can be found in a lot of the technology that we use. That most investigators, if they don't have the ability to go after this technology, what we've seen is they may not even suggest it to you because it's almost like an admission of something that they can't handle. Now, fortunately, we work with a lot of investigators. A lot of them are former state police, a lot of them are FBI agents and people who work in large government industries, and they've already identified the need for the forensic examiner. Now, if we take, for example, your cell phone. From the moment you wake up in the morning, you turn your phone on, you check your email, you check your text message, you check your Facebook, you're already communicating with the world. Now, our electronic device, when we walk in our house, and if we have it set up to grab our Wi-Fi, now you've automatically told someone that you're home. From there, it connects to your network, and once you tell the device that you're home, if it connects to your Wi-Fi, now it tells the world exactly where you are. And you're home, you get up in the morning, you leave to go to work, it automatically jumps from your Wi-Fi network back to your cellular network. Now you've told the world that you've just left the house. You walk from your home, you get into the car, and as you do that, not only is your phone talking to GPS satellites, your phone is also talking to every cell tower that's around it. And what cell towers do, they do what's called a triangulation. So in the same way that a GPS device uses satellites to triangulate where you are, cell towers essentially do the same thing. What they do is they all collect information as far as if you're here, then this device is maybe, or this cell tower is maybe 50 feet away. This one could be 150 feet away, and another cell tower could be 3,000 feet away. That's all an idea of where you are on the face of the planet. In addition to that, based on the signal strength, the cell towers can actually find out where you are as far as your altitude. So let's say if you're in a city environment, and it triangulates where you are, and then you're on the 150th floor of a big high-rise, well, based on your signal strength, it'll tell you exactly where you are in that building. This, combined with the GPS data, paints a really good picture of where exactly you are. Now, we refer to that as call detail records, and some of these call detail records are available from service providers with a subpoena. Some of these call detail records are also available in some mobile devices. Now, that's just one example of how you can be tracked from day to day. It's also a really good example of how the digital investigator can use that information when doing a forensics on a mobile device to tell whoever our client is exactly where you've been. In an iPhone, for example, this is referred to as breadcrumbs. Now, these breadcrumbs are located in the phone, and examiners can pull them out, but you who just pick up the phone and look at it may not actually be able to find that data. One of the other aspects of breadcrumbs or digital information is the information that's encoded in your Facebook text messaging, as well as in pictures that you take and post on Instagram. If you have a modern smartphone, it takes GPS information and it encodes that information into a picture. And one of the things that is crucial in catching people who create porn and child pornography is being able to identify how the picture was taken. For example, you may have heard in the news that sexting became a big issue with teenagers. So if you have a teenager who says, hey, I didn't take that picture, somebody sent it to me. Well, that's easily determined based on the fact that all of the data from when you take a picture is stored in the metadata of that picture. Now, where that's important is if you're a person, let's say you're online dating, and you take a picture and you send it to someone. Now, you don't know who this person is, and maybe you're not at the point in a relationship that you're ready to share your personal information. Maybe you don't want to tell them where you live. Well, guess what? If you take a picture with your mobile device and you send it to someone, there's a very good chance you just told them where you live. If you take the picture at work, you just told them where you work.